My name is Mandy Shreve. I'm the Director of Homeless Solutions for the City of Greeley. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This is a complicated and multifaceted topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. And so I have three of my colleagues here that are also leaders in the city that are going to introduce themselves as well. And really our main intent is to present to you what's happening right now in Greeley and to get your feedback on any questions that you have and concerns that you have with what we're doing. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues.
So my name is Barbara Cranston, and I am a supervising senior attorney with the City Attorney's Office.
Good evening. My name is Will Jones. I'm the Deputy Public Works Director for the City of Greeley.
Good evening, everyone. Adam Turk, I'm your police chief, and I just want to introduce a little bit of my command staff that's here. Commander Mike Heck, he oversees our special operations, which includes our neighborhood action team, and then Sergeant Andy Bird, our sergeant of our neighborhood action team, who deals primarily with downtown issues and homelessness.
So I guess I'm giving the legal perspective first, but we'll talk about what camping restrictions mean. So camping restrictions prohibit people from camping in public spaces without permission. And camping is defined as the use of a public area for living. And then there's different things that can be in an ordinance that would be adopted that would provide evidence of camping. And that includes occupying shelter, which could be a tent, sleeping bag, sleeping or preparing to sleep, storing personal items outside, using a stove or campfire. Camping is restricted, unauthorized camping is restricted differently in different municipalities. Some municipalities prohibit camping on all public property. Some also prohibit it in different areas and have different methods of enforcement based on that. Some cities will look at camping and waste deposit near rivers, and so they'll specifically prohibit that area and because of the health and safety risks. They'll also prohibit camping in parks and natural areas. They'll provide options for the unlawful use of vehicles as a residence, and then some jurisdictions will restrict camping in specifically high fire hazard areas or when there's high fire hazard restrictions. And then there's also sit-lie restrictions that some municipalities have done in certain public spaces, and they'll designate certain areas where people can't sleep or lie at any times during those certain areas. So they'll prevent that kind of action on public property. And then currently the city does enforce different violations that impact the use of public space. So parks and natural areas close each day, so there's a curfew. So if somebody's in the park or natural area after the park is closed, they could be issued a violation for curfew. There's a violation for obstructing highways or pedestrian passageways. And so if somebody's blocking a sidewalk and nobody can get around them, that could be a citation. There's also a violation of loitering. But loitering isn't just being in an area and staying there too long. You actually have to be engaged in an illegal activity like gambling or drugs or other types of activities like that to be convicted of loitering. And then another option that we use is trespass, and that could be when somebody's told to leave a specific area that they're issued that violation. And so in October of 2023, we spoke to council about potentially enacting a camping ban at that time. The status of the law of the United States was different. It was really unknown what cities could do and what cities needed to be able to enforce camping restrictions. In June of last year, the Supreme Court issued a ruling, City of Grants Pass, Oregon versus Johnson. This was a landmark case. It's first case that really provided guidance for cities for what they can do to have the authority to move people or to address encampments that pose significant health and safety risks. So Grants Pass is a small town in Oregon of 38,000 people. They had as many as 600 people experiencing homelessness on a given day, and the city had to pass an ordinance that prohibited activities such as camping on public property or parking overnight in the city's parks. Originally, the Ninth Circuit had heard that case, and they were relying on the precedent at that time, which said that that was cruel and unusual punishment to enforce a camping ban when there weren't enough shelter beds. The Supreme Court held that that is not cruel and unusual punishment that the city has, a local government has a legal authority to address those significant health and safety risks of encampments and to encourage alternative options. The Supreme Court specifically found that and acknowledged how complex of a problem homelessness is, and stated that as a pressing social question. But they also found in their ruling that cities typically do not deploy camping restrictions as that first line of response. They're typically using that to just address those encampment issues with the significant risk, but they're also encouraging those inhabitants to accept other alternatives like shelter, drug treatment, and mental health facilities. And they specifically found that it does not make, that the action of camping on public property that's unauthorized is the crime, and it's all individuals can be convicted of that crime. So as part of this process, the city has been speaking to other municipalities that have enacted a camping ban. And all of the cities have enacted different types of restrictions that we spoke to. We spoke to Denver, Colorado Springs, Boulder, Fort Collins, and Loveland, just to learn more about how they approach encampment cleanups, camping bans, resources, all of those things. And they all have different approaches. But just some general learnings that we found, that some of the cities will identify locations based on the health and safety risks that we've talked about, and they'll differentiate their enforcement based on those locations if there's a higher risk. All of the cities had a camping ban for all of the public property, but they would just differentiate some of that enforcement. All those jurisdictions did have more shelter capacity than the city of Greeley does for people. Some cities enacted, specifically part of the court system, another option or another opportunity to provide resources to help mitigate the penalty for a violation. All of the cities had varied approaches to storing personal property, from not storing it to storing it for months after cleanups. And they also had different policies on what types of property to store, but they all did have policies to address that. And then they all had a multi-departmental approach to enforcement and cleanups, similar to what the city of Greeley has. And now will talk about the city's current approach to camping.
Thank you, Bobber. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. Before we kind of start going much farther, I think it's important to kind of highlight what our current process is as it relates to encampment cleanups. I won't go into specific detail on each one of these, but give some highlights and some data points that I think are relevant to the conversation and decision moving forward. One critical point as we look at this current process as well as any future changes to that process, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that the first part of it and the most important piece is providing resources, right? So regardless of what we're doing, part of a component of this, and the most important, is making sure we're providing resources to the folks in need. As Bobber mentioned, trespass citations are currently issued, but they're not an effective tool to really manage the reoccurring component of these encampment cleanups. As you can see on the bottom there, this is a repeated process over and over again. Currently, about every week, we're doing this along the bridges and waterways throughout Greeley. And so over the past years, from a data perspective, we've removed nearly 1,400 cubic yards of trash and materials from encampment cleanup sites throughout the city. To put that in perspective, that's about 115 dump truck loads of trash and material, and costing the city about $155,000 worth of resources. Unfortunately, that number, that cubic yard, does not take into account the amount of material that have floated down the river. There is elements that, and you can see that as well. So, next slide, please. As we consider the new restrictions, three key areas as you look at this are really driving this. So improving safety, keeping spaces clean, and infrastructure damage. And so first, safety. Obviously, encampments, in our opinion, pose a serious fire hazard, public health risks, and other dangers to both those living in it and the surrounding community. Open fires near vegetation could quickly spread, human waste introduced E. coli to our waterways, and damage to our riverbanks, be vegetation or actually digging into the riverbanks, cause future flooding risks. Second, maintaining clean public space. Both are for our cities here in Greeley, but also our neighbors downstream. As I mentioned, a lot of the materials do float, down the river, Associated River. And so, protecting these spaces are critical to public health and overall community well-being. Finally, infrastructure damage beyond the safety and health concerns outlined in some of the pictures there as well. We see a significant amount of issues on and around bridges. As an example, in 2022, we did have a pretty significant fire under the 11th Avenue and Prudhoe River Bridge, and that damage was cost the city about $100,000. We actually almost had to close the bridge because of damage to a span. We often, in that case, we actually had someone had found a stove and brought it underneath, but we often find propane tanks and all kinds of different fire materials to obviously keep warm and such. But with that, I'll hand it to Turk.
Thanks, Will. So I'm gonna give a high-level overview of the response of the police department when we deal with calls or people experiencing homelessness. It is not illegal to be homeless. It is illegal to commit crimes. So over the last few years, we've taken a multi-tiered approach to how we respond to calls for service, because just the mere fact that someone's experiencing homelessness may not need a police officer to respond. So we've been working with other departments across the city, other nonprofits, to really identify and determine who needs to be going to this call for service. The police department doesn't create the laws. We follow them, we enforce them, and we operate within them. So our approach over the last 4 years has really been, is there a crime being committed that we need to respond to? Or can we divert this call to another service that might be more appropriate? So I'm first going to talk about what we currently do and what we respond to. So if it is a call for service that involves criminal activity within the ordinances and laws that we have today, for example, trespass, obstruction, harassment, we will respond accordingly and we will investigate accordingly. If it doesn't fit that criteria, we may try to identify a different resource that can respond. As with any new ordinance or law, we start with outreach and education, verbal compliance, which we get a lot done with, written citations, and then as a last result, arrest. If a camping ban is enacted, we would follow that same matrix, whatever form it's in. When the policy decision makers come up with that, we would follow that same matrix. Outreach and education, verbal compliance, written citations, and then arrest as a last resort. So that's going to be my part, and then I'll be happy to answer questions at the end.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why we have encampments. Why are people experiencing homelessness? And what I can say is the past 6 years that I've been in the housing and homelessness space, I've never met one person who said they wanted to be homeless, and I never met one person who said they enjoyed living on the streets. The reality is there's a lot of people living in poverty or at that poverty line, and a lot of people are just one paycheck away from becoming homeless. It could be a health crisis, they could have lost their job, and then quickly see themselves facing with eviction because the bills have, piled up. And a lot of times people don't have family and support systems to help them get back on their feet. And so they'll quickly find themselves with the only option to go to the street. And the encampments that they find themselves in are then their only form of community that they have when they're at the lowest point in their life. And so what I will say is that homelessness is a national problem right now. It is not unique to Colorado, and it is not unique to Greeley. Between 2022 and 2023, there was a 12% increase in homelessness nationwide. There were 653,000 Americans experiencing homelessness. Between 2023 and 2024, there was an additional 18% on top of that 12% of people experiencing homelessness. So now you're over 700,000 Americans experiencing homelessness. It's unfortunate, but we do not see this trend continuing to go away. It's going to continue to increase. And so, sorry, Emma, next slide. So this is a data from HUD, and what it shows is the strong correlation between how much it costs for rent per month and how much housing costs and the number of people that are becoming homeless. It's interesting that Colorado is one of the more expensive places to live. Typically, you think of like Hawaii, right? New York, California, but we are right up there with $1,600 per month for rent, and that's the state average. So when you take this data, and next slide, please, and you look at kind of what's happening in Greeley, I mean, there's been a 29% increase in home prices, and that's since 2019, but I think we all know that those prices are continuing to go up. We don't see it changing anytime soon. At the same time, wages are not keeping up with the pace of the increase in housing. And so you can think of what's minimum wage in Colorado is actually pretty good compared to other states. I think it's around almost $15 an hour, so that's someone making about $30,000 a year. And you can't afford the average home price in Greeley, which, you know, the data fluctuates month to month, but it could be anywhere from $400,000 to $430,000 for a home right now in Greeley, the average sales price. The average, if you're single, the average median income is $80,000. You can't afford a $400,000 house making $80,000. You need to be making six figures. You need to be making $125,000 or more. And I think we can all say that most people aren't making six figures right now in Greeley. And so that's a lot of the economics that we're up against. A couple years ago, some data came out, so it's 2 years old. That 7.2, and this was from HUD, that 7.2 million Americans are rent burdened right now. Rent burden means that over 50% of your income is going towards housing. You would typically want only 30% or less of your income going towards housing. And so when that happens, you will see that there's overcrowding because people are doubling up. You will typically see two families trying to live in one home just to make ends meet. So that's kind of the economics of what's happening. And, you know, in Greeley and nationwide, communities are responding to this crisis, right? I know Ernest is here from United Way. But some of the data that they shared with us is that since the shelter has been open since November, about 49% of the people that they have seen coming into the shelter are experiencing homelessness for the first time. That means that they did not access the shelter the year before. Another data point that they have seen is that about 65% of the individuals that are using the shelter, they are Weld County residents, and of that 65%, I think 46, I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, 46% have been Weld County residents 5 years or plus. So these are people in our community that are vulnerable and needing our help. And so what I will say is we have a bunch of great community partners. They are here tonight that are in the effort to help people experiencing homelessness. We have a lot of resources coming into the community, and the resources, they are working. The resources and the interventions to help people get out of homelessness are 100% working, and they're proven best practices. So the community has funding for vouchers, permanent supportive housing vouchers. These vouchers help people that have been experiencing homelessness the longest in our community and more than likely have a disability that's going to keep them from gaining employment. And the success of the voucher is because we have case managers that are the support system for these individuals when they don't have one, and they're able to help keep them housed. We also have resources in the community where we're able to catch people as they're just entering into homelessness, and maybe they just need like 6 months to 12 months to get back on their feet, save some money, get a job again, get back on their feet. We've had a ton of success with that program. A lot of families entering into homelessness, living in their cars that we're able to help get back on their feet. So what I will say is we know how to help people exit homelessness. What is happening right now, if you go to the next slide, is that we don't have enough resources to meet the need. If you look at data over the past 2 years, on average, 100 people are entering into homelessness, and at the same time, and this is per month, 35 people are exiting. So there's 65% of those people are stuck with no resources to exit out. So that's one of our challenges that we're dealing with right now. Another interesting thing, and Greeley might be one of the only communities I know of so far, but we do not have a shelter that stays open year-round. That's a big gap in the community, to not have a place to take people. And in addition to that, when we are able to keep it open, it's for 60 beds. A lot of other communities have a much higher capacity for beds than that. So those are the challenges that we're up against. If you go to the next slide, these are individuals that we've been able to help house in our community. For every one face that you see there, just remember there's 7 other people that are still stuck in the system and on the streets. And so we really wanted to come here. I mean, you can see this is a complicated issue. It's multifaceted. We wanted to present to you kind of what we're doing in the community, what's happening. We have a survey, and there was a survey that should have been on the table. So you can do paper, or you can do this, you can keep going, this QR code, but we would like your feedback by March 2nd, and we are going to take that feedback and we're going to give it to our council members. And we plan to share this same briefing to our council, so to inform their decision making. And as our policymakers, they will be able to decide, if we keep doing what we're always doing, or if we change any rules or regulations around how we're enforcing the camping ban right now. So that's kind of the timeline of where we're at. Am I forgetting anything? No. So we are all here to answer questions, and I think we're happy to open it up to the floor now.
My name is Ann LaPlante. I'm a local attorney. Couple of concerns. We do have a year-round homeless shelter. It's called Guadalupe Shelter. It's not enough capacity, but you seem to have ignored that. Your definition of camping includes a lot of what looks like picnicking to me. So I think you're way too broad to potentially incarcerate someone or make them a criminal for doing things that many of us do regularly in public spaces in Greeley.
Yeah, so you're absolutely correct. The Guadalupe Center is open to women and families. I was referring to the United Way shelter, who specifically is helping individuals experiencing homelessness.
My name is Amber, and I was just wondering, because I know that a lot of the support for the homeless community in Greeley comes through the United Way, if the United Way is concerned about potential loss of funding with everything that's going on politically, and if the city or the county is going to supplement funding for the United Way if they lose federal funding.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. I think it's an important question. Obviously, the political climate has changed, and there is some concerns around federal funding for nonprofits. So I think it's fair to say that we don't know what that outcome is still going to look like. I think there's a lot of questions. But with that being said, I think it is important to note that a lot of the funding that we do currently have for the United Way Homeless Shelter is, in fact, COVID dollars that are going to be exhausted. Those dollars are running short, and we are in a position that we know we can have enough funding at the current state to fund us through this winter shelter program for sure. And then we will be working with the city and a lot of other funding sources out there to begin to look at what that would look like for the next year. The funding for a year-round shelter, we did apply for a huge grant. Unfortunately, we did not get those dollars at the state level. And we are noticing that a lot more dollars are going to homeless prevention, which is extremely important because as Mandy mentioned, we are seeing a lot of folks coming into homelessness, and we're trying to prevent. It is so much, it's so cost effective to help keep folks that are in housing housed first and up front. And then folks who lose housing because now they have evictions, and those know that help folks know you're trying to do double deposits then, first month's, last month's, and it can cost tens of thousands of dollars at times to get folks back into housing, and then with their records. So we're wanting to understand, it is important to understand that eviction prevention and homeless prevention is so important, but the need for dollars for shelters is just as important, because if the shelter closes, then we don't have any place for folks to go, period. And we're not the only, the Guadalupe shelter is also taking a look at their funding streams as well. And so I think it's important to note that that is a concern, and that will be something that we'll be working with the city as well as our other funding resources to see what that will look like for the future. I wish I had a solid answer for you, but what I can tell you is we do have enough funding currently to get us through this winter for sure.
My name is Uli Limpetlaw, and just for the record, could you explain to us how much a homeless person costs the city per year as compared how much it would cost to house one? Maybe somebody has an answer for that.
Yeah, I don't have like an exact dollar of how much it costs to house someone versus not, but I know that we have a lot of research and data that it is cheaper to house someone than them remaining homeless as it relates to the amount of effort on the healthcare system, the number of calls that the police department might get or the paramedics might get. We do have data that shows that once somebody has been housed, those calls reduce drastically. And I think Chief Turk could talk to some of the reduction that they have seen in those calls as well. So it does free up the public safety personnel to do more. I don't think, I'm not going to speak for the police, but that they want to always be responding to individuals that might be experiencing homelessness that are in crisis. Typically, comes better from case management team of civilians that are trained to work with people experiencing homelessness, which is what the city of Greeley has implemented. Did that answer enough of your question?
The state has estimated it's about $10,000 a year to house someone who is homeless. And then to look at the cost of leaving them on the street, you have to look at how many times they're using the emergency room, using police, the cost of cleanups. So it's a little hard to compare sort of apples to apples in that case. But Mandy's exactly right in terms of the research shows that it's less expensive to all the other systems. But we were in a training today, and so even though, say the hospital is going to incur less cost because people aren't using the emergency room for shelter, not really emergencies, it's not as if they're going to then reallocate those costs to homeless services. So, but that's that has been an argument and one of the reasons that the whole Housing First model was adopted. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. So my first question is for is in regards to the city's efforts to counteract the supply issue. You alluded in your presentation to the fact that there is a shortage of affordable housing in Greeley and in Weld County, and I think a lot of us that work in the field of housing would agree that there's also a pretty significant lack of permanent supportive housing. So it seems to me that if we're going to implement some sort of consequence and punishment above and beyond what currently exists in regards to public camping, there should be some sort of additional efforts made by the city above and beyond shelter capacity to provide affordable options for the community, because otherwise we're just going to see these folks camping elsewhere and hopping from space to space. So I'd like to hear from the city about what plans they have to implement further affordable housing in the community.
Okay. So we have a Department of Housing that was established last year. We hired a director, and right now they are in the process of going through a strategic plan that will be presented to council. The sort of interim report is being presented to council March 11th. In terms of permanent supportive housing, so the city has applied for grants. That's where our vouchers come from. And we have 60 and just got 20 more. And then we also, our CDBG and Home Program have provided support for Weld Village, Star Rise project, and that's going to be 57 units, which is fabulous. And I think, is Jody here? Jody, when are you opening your doors?
So I'm Jody Hartman. I'm the director of the High Plains Housing Development Organization. We're an affordable housing developer here in Greeley. And right now, if you drive north on 9th Avenue and 1st Street, you will see a very large building being built. That will be 58 units of permanent supportive housing to house our most vulnerable unhoused individuals. It is under construction now, and it will be completed in probably October this year. So this is going to take 58 of our most vulnerable people who are living on the streets, off the streets. I do have a quick question, though. You know, you did an excellent job, Mandy, of explaining the need and how it is growing. But I see a bit of a dichotomy between the city enacting a camping ban while our homeless situation is growing. So maybe if you could address, how we're bridging that issue. It almost doesn't make sense to be banning encampments when we don't really have the capacity to shelter. And of course, permanent supportive housing is the ultimate answer, and the community is working very hard to try to build as much as we can, but there's definitely needs to be a lot more housing solutions, and in particular, if we are going to be banning encampments in the community.
Jody, I just got voluntold to answer this question. So I'm going to do it in the light most favorable to, it's a really difficult argument. And I hear both sides of it. I look at the camping ban as a tool in the toolbox to help engage those resources from people that may not want them. So yes, it is difficult when you don't have places to take people. And I'll be honest, it's not just the places to take them, it's also their property and their lives. One of the challenges we have at the police department is someone experiencing homelessness is typically traveling with their entire life. And when you take that from them and you don't have somewhere to put it, that is one of the other challenges, which we didn't go through the presentation, but our police officers don't want to catalog and inventory 8 hours worth of property because now we're responsible for it. So the police department has no illusion that we want to go arrest our way out of this problem, because we know that the property is a problem also, and we don't have anywhere to take it. I think we have some facilities out at 35th Avenue at Bestway. That's a short-term solution, but when we take the property at the police department, they don't come get it because they don't want to come to the police department. So there's other challenges that go with it, but I'm trying to give you the best answer I can out of your question, but yeah, there's not enough beds. Go ahead, Juliana.
And Jody, I mean, you're right? It feels sort of strange. It's a dichotomy, especially with what Mandy was saying. But what we're trying to do is provide counsel who will be making the decision. Sorry, our council members who are here to put the pressure on, but with the best information that they could possibly have as they're weighing and considering these things. And why is this coming up? It's coming up because we've had lots of different community members and community leaders who have asked for this. So, I mean, that is council's responsibility to be responsive to the community and really do a deep dive and consider all aspects of this.
My name is Laura Gurney, and I am the administrator at First Congregational Church here in town. And my question is, because there is not a year-round low-barrier shelter in Greeley, and because our current shelter is only funded through April 15th of this year, not the whole winter, April 15th, which matters, And because the people who access that shelter do not simply cease to be when the shelter closes, what does the city propose that folks experiencing homelessness do if there is not sufficient year-round accessible shelter? Camping is illegal. What legal existence do these people have? Excuse me.
I mean, you're right. And this is my opinion. It's not fair. Was part of when the shelter closed. It was able to stay open 9 months this past year because the city was able to help find some funding to help keep the doors open. And I think the city's, that's a continued goal is trying to help figure that out. And we work really closely with United Way. But, it's not fair to the individual who now has to return back to living on the streets. That's a very traumatic experience for them. It's not fair to the community members who now have people camping in their parks and maybe their house is right across the street. It's not fair to the downtown business owners. It's a lose-lose, in my opinion, for the community.
It's about resources.
And I think that's what I was trying to say, and maybe I didn't say it well enough, but if we had the resources to put behind the efforts, we know how to help get people out of homelessness, but we need that commitment.
And we need it.
Go ahead, Juliana.
Sorry. Mandy and I are now having a conversation that we have every day. And I think to have it be sustainable, it has to be more than one source of funding. We need our community for the folks who are interested and want to have, say, the priority be a shelter year-round, help us. Help the city, help those not-for-profits. I think there's lots of different ways to do that. Happy to talk to you about some of those possibilities afterwards. But really, I think it's always got to be driven by the community, saying that this is important. And so, whatever is funded is typically what's most important.
There are lots of people here who are working together to try to solve this problem and provide resources. My question is there anyone from the county here? And what is their position on assisting in this problem? You said that more than 50% of the people are from Weld County. That doesn't mean just Greeley. There is a homeless problem throughout the county.
Anybody from the county? I think that's been an ongoing. That's been an ongoing dilemma, and it's something that, we've certainly heard Mayor Gates talk about it. That would be great. We would welcome their partnership. Right now, that's not happening on this issue.
What's the question?
Any state funding?
Yes, the state has been a great supporter of the work that we do, and pretty much like over half our department is funded through the state of Colorado. They've been a great partner, and we're continuing to seek funding opportunities as they become available.
Hi, my name is Brittany, and I'm actually the operations manager for Catholic Charities Guadalupe Community Center. And I've heard a few things, so I just wanted to make sure that the community has correct information. We do offer shelter year-round on an emergency basis, so that is low barrier. But that is for women and families only. So for the men, we don't have an option for them other than our transitional housing program. So there's a few more requirements for that, but I did just want to state that we do have beds available for women and families on a nightly basis. No requirement, just come get your basic needs met. Thanks.
I was trying to be last. But first of all, that we claim to be the richest country on this planet. Why is there so many people homeless? And anybody could be homeless. How would put yourself in a place, all of a sudden you're homeless for whatever reason. And as, I forgot her name, as she was saying at the beginning, that nobody really wants to be homeless down deep. They really don't. But resources. Also, I think that just not the government, but the nonprofits, the businesses, and the community as a whole, we got to band together to have options, opportunities, to have temporary and permanent housing. And if we went back to the prices of 1970s and housing in 1970s, we probably wouldn't be here today talking, because there's, and I've given the city council and the county commissioners, and it's not my ideas, but what I came across about 14 or 15 ideas of permanent or temporary housing. And I think too that down in Colorado Springs, they have a mission, and how they got that set up is really good. And I would recommend that, since we got the internet, that people look up and how they do it, because I think we need something up here like that. Trying to survive being homeless, and she's right, a lot of people don't have support. Also too, HUD is not taking applications. They haven't taken applications since last year. It's right on their door, and that causes problems. And 70% of families in District 6 schools is under the poverty level. I got that from the superintendent. And Weld County is the 4th unaffordable county in Colorado. And it's more than, in some people's cases, it's almost your whole paycheck to have, if you even get enough for an apartment. And so we need to come together, and we need to house people and prevent homelessness too. I have more, but I'll let somebody else talk.
She's been trying.
You've been ignoring me, Emma. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel. I'm one of the case managers currently on the homeless outreach team. We've been referred to a couple of times in the presentation, so I just want to make sure everyone has an accurate understanding of what our team does. Right now, we do not have the capacity to get people out of encampments and off the streets in the capacity that people are in them. Last year, we had over 700 unique individuals that we had contact with, and there's just not that much housing support in our community. There's currently also only 8 of us, so only 8 people trying to help this huge problem is incredibly unrealistic. So I wrote a little synopsis. Our City of Greeley Homeless Solutions Outreach Team works to engage individuals experiencing homelessness by providing support, resources, and services to help them transition off the streets. Our team includes case managers who connect with people in need, offering basic necessities like food, clothing, and shelter referrals. We access individual needs, provide access to healthcare, mental health services, and substance abuse treatment. We work to help secure long-term housing. We administer the VI SPDAT and hold space in the CAPS case conferencing meetings and try to get our participants matched to appropriate community housing resources. We're able to provide emergency housing assistance in a case-by-case basis. We're also able to get people document ready by securing and paying for IDs, driver's licenses, social security cards, and birth certificates. We can provide transportation services as appropriate. So that's a pretty accurate synopsis of what our outreach team does, and it's not providing housing on the level that we need in our community. And I also wanted to ask Jody, if I could, I know you're not on the panel, the Star Rise, is it gonna hold the 57 beds for Greeley, people experiencing homelessness in Greeley specifically, or is it gonna take from coordinated entry, which also has people in Loveland and Fort Collins?
So we will be pulling names from the coordinated entry system, but we will be prioritizing Greeley Weld residents. I'm fairly confident that 100% of those 58 units are going to be filled by Greeley and Weld County residents. We have plenty of people in this community.
Is it a temporary or permanent?
This is permanent housing, and it's called permanent supportive housing. And the key word there is supportive. So not only are we providing folks with an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment, they sign a lease, they pay 30% of their income for rent, but they will also be receiving supportive services in order to help them remain stably housed. And that really is the key, just like this team is providing support to the people who have vouchers and are renting out in the community. This is how you keep people who have been formerly unhoused living on the street for a very long time with a lot of co-occurring morbidities. That's how you keep them housed. So we have the funding in place to provide supportive services, case managers, behavioral health workers, and peer support specialists will all be helping us keep our folks stably housed.
Hi, I'm Linda McSwain. I have a building downtown Greeley, the Conservatory Building, been there 30-some years. It's a dance studio, and Starla and Judon are here also. They have the top-notch dance studio that they rent space as well. And over the years, we've had many issues with homelessness, but the real question, I think, right now is we have a couple men who are well-known to the police department, and they go back and forth. At night, they know when Precision Security, who surrounds downtown, as a security, they know when they leave at 7 o'clock. Well, the dance studio is open until 9, 10 o'clock. We have students that are there, and they can be belligerent, pounding on our doors. We have our doors locked. Dancers have to use codes now to get in. Are pounding on the doors, wanting to get in, and sleep at the front on 8th Street in the alcove there. They use the back porch. We have cameras that are up now. We see them, and my office manager uses not these nice words, but they urinate, they defecate. We catch them on camera using drugs. Again, these are people, now I know what their names are instead of just stoner, and who have been thrown out of one location and find places where they can go. And what has really happened is tight-knit brewery has left at the end of the year. Well, these men now know how vulnerable the evening dancers that we are, and this is a terrible situation for young children and our families. It's a problem.
Well said. This is why we're here. It's a complicated issue. Not everyone wants the resources, the support, and the housing. So what is that extra tool in the toolbox that we can do for those people who know the rules and the laws better than some of our police officers? They know what obstruction is. They know where they can be. They know where the parks close at 11. Precision Security is a force multiplier and helps us on the proactive side for public safety, perception of safety, and good behavior. I'm not here answering your question. I empathize with you. I understand the situation, which is why we're here talking about this issue as another tool in the toolbox for the chronic.
Hi, my name is Troy Doka. I'm with Fauna's Pizza. My question is, of the programs that the city is using for the homeless, who deals with the mental issues with the homeless that are not of level head? Because that is a problem that I'm dealing with on a daily and weekly basis, to the fact that my future on 8th Avenue is maybe coming to an end, and I will be looking towards the other end of town. Mm-hmm. So 40-something years I've been there, and now I may have to move.
Okay, so from the mental health aspect, what I will say is it's not unusual the longer that someone is experiencing homelessness that they eventually have some kind of mental health disorder from living on the streets because it's so hard. And that's one of the challenges that we have with helping take care of this population. We do partner with our behavioral health organizations in the community, North Range Behavioral Health being one of those main partners to help take care of the psychiatric need. But I think you might be looking for more.
Yeah, this is a challenge where I think the city of Greeley, the police department, and the fire department have been extremely proactive over the last 5 years. When I was talking about triaging calls for service and sending the right resources, do we need to send a police officer to someone who's experiencing a mental health crisis? We have an amazing partnership with North Range Behavioral Health, and we partner with co-responders who are mental health professionals. and Squad 1, which is the medical side of mental health, in an effort to reduce the repeated calls for service to the police department, but also to provide the follow-up care. Because the police department does, we go, we handle, move on to the next triage, we do some prevention education, but what's that follow-up care look like? North Range gets to provide some of that follow-up care. But we have good partnerships so that we send the right resource to the right situation.
Hi, my name is Lainey Hasso, and I just wanted to ask about affordable housing development. Has the city approached any developers or thought of like tax incentives that we can try to draw those people in to Greeley or to the Weld County area?
So that's a great question, and I will tell you that our housing director, Deb Calise, has been meeting with lots of developers, and part of our strategic plan, we did a developers roundtable. We did several, and that was the one that was most well-attended, and it was developers from market rate to deeply affordable, across the spectrum. And as we present the strategic plan to council, there'll be a number of options, including potential incentives that ultimately our council will make decisions on.
Don't sit down, Juliana. Can you speak to a little bit more of maybe other creative funding sources besides like governmental grants or developers, like how the community or creative ideas that might be presented to the council for more creative contributions, either from the community or other funding sources? Is there talk about that or ideas that are being presented outside of the normal sort of grant structures that we've been presented?
Sure. I can say, my New York was coming out for a minute. I can say that, like in Milwaukee, much larger city, their DDA provides $1 million to the homeless services because they see the benefit of the work that homeless services group is doing. In Oklahoma City, they have a variety of TIF districts. So essentially a small percentage of tax going to support whether it's affordable housing or homeless services. Those are a couple different options that I have seen. Yeah. And I mean, there's one other I was thinking about, which is sort of a housing trust. It was just in its infancy in Amarillo, and really and it was a small pot of money, and it was more to help, like, if someone needed help just to get a deposit. So people with more moderate needs, they weren't going to need long-term help, but like the different not-for-profits could access this, and it was sort of a smaller amounts, but quick resources. Yeah.
I was just wondering if the city has given any thought to possibly creating a sanctioned encampment that's away from the businesses and away from neighborhoods where they might not necessarily want to deal with somebody who's experiencing homelessness?
I've heard of it. I will tell you that I'm not in favor of it. I've seen this in other communities, tent cities, areas where you're putting people from all over the community in a specific area. Part of the problems with that is you still have to police it, you still have to clean it, and you're potentially putting people not knowing what their situation is. Maybe they're on probation, maybe they have restraining orders, substance abuse. It could be a recipe of problems. So that is my opinion on, because I've seen it in other communities and it hasn't worked.
What I'll just say that's a little bit different from what Chief Turk said is a lot of communities do have like safe places to park and things like that I think is worth exploring. But really at the end of the day, when you think of, well, why am I trying to create a place for people to self-park? It's because of that shelter component and that basic need of shelter. Yeah, I'm so sorry. So all I was saying is that when we start trying to think of these creative solutions, you have to think about like, well, why this? And it's that shelter component that I just go back to like the resources for housing would solve a lot of this. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question, and then I'll want to make a statement. How much money, and I may have missed this because I was a few minutes late, and you may have said it, but how much money does the city of Greeley spend on homelessness, if that's what you want to call it? How much money does the city of Greeley budget for that each year?
So it's approximately 2 million, but yeah, does that, okay.
So that's $2 million that you know of, but that has nothing to do with that officer over there, okay? And all the other officers that work there, and the fire department, and the medical people, and all that. So, you know, and let me back up. My name's Greg Yielding, and I can walk over here, okay? And there's a bunch of neighbors that live down there. And, you know, I'm talking for them too, because I've talked to them. I've had people go in the alley, set up there. I've had to clean the alley. I've called the alderman to have the city try to clean the alley, which they did. There's needles out there. There's, you know, everything that's horrible for my children, for other people's children in this neighborhood to have to deal with. And I've had them try to camp across the street, you know, in vacant lots, and the police have had to come. I've seen it other places in town. I remember when all this camping was going on out here by JBS. That was horrible in the natural area, as it's called. I mean, this city can't, and I'm not, and I understand, and I appreciate everything that people are trying to do with their organizations to try to solve the problem and get people back on their feet. But some people don't want to get back on their feet. Some people just do this, okay? And yes, things are expensive here. I'm not originally from here. When I moved here from another state, it was sticker shock. I can just imagine people that don't, you know, that can't do this. So what am I getting for? Where am I getting to is we need a camping ban. And I've been on the city council in another state, in another city. And I understand problems. And I understand exactly what the officer's talking about. No, you don't need another place to camp. No way. That doesn't work. You've got to have a camping ban. You've got to enforce it. It's not fair to the neighborhoods. It's, you know, I really don't notice it much out west. For some reason, they don't go out west and set up in a right of way under a tree or anything. It's always down here. Well, that's where I've chosen to invest my, you know, what I make, and I like older homes, and that's what I did. And then there's a lot of people that maybe they've lived there for a long time, you know, and I know because they tell me. And we just can't have it here. So we spend $2 million. We know what the economics are of living here. We know what the median income needs to be and what the rents are, okay? I mean, I hate to say it, but y'all, this is a losing proposition. It's not sustainable. Yes, we need to take care of the people that live in Greeley or Weld County first, but you do not want to be in a situation like our capital down here, because you know how many multiple millions of dollars they spend, and it doesn't help. So, you know, I don't know the solution. I don't know if anybody does. I appreciate what everybody's doing, trying to help people. I've helped people that really needed it, okay? But we just can't let it go where they can just think they can camp everywhere. We've got to start with this to protect the children in our communities and our investments where people live, you know, in the neighborhoods, wherever it is in, you know, in Greeley. So, you know, I would just say that there's a lot of people that are homeowners and that are renters that live here that don't want to see people camping on the street or in the alleys or anywhere else. So I want to say that. Thank you.
I know we're here for a camping ban, and I really appreciate our outreach team and housing team. You do a wonderful job, so thank you for all you're doing on that side of it. But what I'm hearing tonight is at the end of the day, it's more costly. the longer somebody's on the streets or homeless. So can you touch on what you're doing for prevention? Because I think that would be the most cost-effective way to try to help our community. And ideally, what I would love to see is some kind of centralized system where we have landlords and apartment complexes that go on and register, and when somebody is 1 month late, that they are getting the help immediately up front.
Councilmember McDonald, thank you. You're totally it's speaking to my heart. I've been thinking about prevention more and more. I mean, I've been in the business for 20 years, and it's disheartening that we are at this place because we do these interventions and then we never take them to scale. That's across the country, and so then we're always sort of behind the 8 ball. We saw the numbers coming in versus the numbers going out, and that's a losing bet all the time. In terms of prevention, we provided through ARPA dollars, I think it was about $350,000 to Catholic Charities to do prevention, and they were wildly successful with the people that were able to get the service, but they were turning away people every single day. In terms of your idea, I mean, that is the system that we need, right? Is how do we work further upstream? And then in terms of the dollars, though, for prevention dollars, really right now we're applying for different grants. That's our resource for that. But there are some other groups here that are doing prevention. If any of you, United Way or Catholic Charities, want to talk about specifically what you're doing, please come on up.
Hi, this is tall. Okay, so yeah, my name is Brittany. I'm the operations manager for Catholic Charities. So our emergency assistance is utilities and rental assistance. And like Juliana said, we've got a huge grant and we spent it down in 6 months. And she also mentioned that we were turning people away every day. So we were able to get an additional grant that covers the next 3 years, and our appointments fill up the first day of the month. So we do not have the capacity nor the dollars to schedule more than 10 appointments a month. And then we have 7 other appointments that are reserved by our community partners. We get those by referral. But like I said, there's just too big of a need in the community. And so additionally with utility assistance, those appointments fill up within the first 3 days. So yeah, does anyone have any questions before I go back there?
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. You take 10 appointments and then you have an additional 7?
Yeah, so.
How do you do the rest of the month?
So we take 10 appointments and we base that on the cost of rent. So if somebody's behind 2 months, that could be like $4,000. And so we have kind of divided out this grant over the next 3 years. And so that's what that kind of looks like. So we Catholic Charities do 10 appointments, and then we have 7 appointments reserved by community partners. But our emergency assistance operates through a hotline. And so people call that hotline the first day of the month, and the appointments that we have available for rental assistance are booked the first day. And I can even tell you that they're booked within the first 20 minutes the hotline is operating. So it's a huge need in the community, and we are really focusing on homelessness prevention. We're always going to provide shelter, but we want to do the best that we can to prevent people from getting to our shelter.
My name is Pat, and this is my second time coming to one of these sessions, and I'm a community member. I've lived here over 50 years, and I'm old enough, I guess, to understand that in life, you're always going to have these issues, what I call issues. Now we're in the homelessness issue. I have several thoughts. One is the camping. I agree. I think it needs to be more specific. Encampments is what you're dealing with, specifically here in Greeley. But to extend beyond that, and as I've listened to all of the other session in this, I hear a lot of the same thing. It's a lot of the same information. It's information that I think we all know. We may not have the specific numbers, but we know about what the issues are. Take your caps off of professionalism and just look at it as a human being. We have people who, for whatever the reasons are not able to live in a shelter. or a home. That's the issue. So we've heard about all of the support, and I give kudos to every single individual, organization that has been a part of this major issue. But it's never going to end if we just plug it here, plug it there, do this, do that. Because it sounds like it's a multifaceted problem. How do you solve such a major problem? We each have our own little solutions, but it's not going to solve it overall. People's lives, businesses, homeowners, children, on and on and on. So what do we do? You talked about community stepping up. Well, what specifically can the community do? We have to show up in numbers to a council meeting? The council are the people that represent us. But do they? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that question. You have to answer it. Because if homelessness is an issue for you, if it affects you, someone you know, someone you love, a relative, it does affect you. Throwing money out helps. I understand that. But let's take this serious. Let's take all the pieces and look down to the nitty-gritty. What can we do? What are some ideas? Now, I know I've thought a lot about this, and I may be way out. But off of 34 by Georgia Boys, there's a building. Hasn't been completed, abandoned. I don't know the legal pieces. I don't know why. The little I read in the newspaper, which I think that's another issue, you want to get information out, that's one of the resources. Do it on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That's the only time we receive the newspaper at our house. We're not into the social media piece as much as some of you are. So our information that we get at our house is based on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Get more information out to people. But there's that abandoned building. What ideas could be done from the city perspective in buying that, taking it over, and there's, I don't know how many rooms that has. I mean, those are the ideas, the creative pieces. And I guess what I would recommend, I don't want to take much longer, but I would recommend a session where we not rehash the information that I think we all know. We hear of all the good things that all the community and organizations are doing. What I would like is specific ideas, solutions, what we each think. That's my offer, is that building. I also think the city didn't do a good job with that Bonnell nursing home. That was a structure that my mother was a part of. She lived there. When that was abandoned, I remember thinking, dang, this would be a good opportunity for the city or someone, some group, anyone, to take it over in all those rooms. I was in that building with my mom. I know every part of those hallways. What an opportunity. Could have been a shelter. And how many rooms? I don't know. It was a lot. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna get off my soapbox here. I think those are the solutions. Think out of the box. That was part of my motto in my profession. Think out of the box. Think of ways and spend the money in a creative and opportunistic way for homelessness. And you're right, we're never going to resolve all of the homelessness. I'm too old. That's been a part of my life. It's always been there. It was always pushed away. At least now we can talk about it. So what do? My husband had a really good saying one time, well, many times. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I think that's how we tackle this elephant of homelessness. Sorry, I just wanted to get that off my chest. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. My name's Hannah Connor, and I could give you my professional title and where I work, but I haven't heard it from a lot of folks that have experienced homelessness, so I want to state that I was a child that experienced chronic homelessness, and I want to represent that in this conversation. But my question is, you mentioned the $2 million that are provided through the city funding. What's the overall funding of the city, and how much does that $2 million actually make up? Because it sounds like a lot, but if I had to guess, it's in the single digits of the percentile of the whole overall city. So I just wanted to make a clarifying question on that, and I'm curious if you can give us those numbers.
My name is Bill Kurtz, born and raised in Greeley. I live downtown, right across from Linda's building. Been there for about 8 years. And there's a lot of people in this room that have done wonderful things, and there's no question they need more funding. But I don't think this camping ban is about reallocating funding or really reallocating priorities. I think we're not talking about taking dollars and saying, okay, let's give it to Chief Turk to go kick people out of town. What we're talking about is just giving an additional tool. And it should be a tool that's rarely used, but there are times where it is important. Tight Knit was one of our favorite places. I think a significant reason why they left was because of the economic consequences of not homeless people that are in need of, but homeless people who are belligerent and they threaten your safety, or at least you feel threatened. So this is just one more tool. It's not about reallocating assets. It's about giving them the tool when there's a time where people will not accept resources. And it is an economic for Fonta's Pizza, for Tight Knit, for Linda to have a viable investment in her building. You've had a lot of downtown businesses that have left here recently, and this is a part of it, is when there's no alternative.
Hi, my name's Lucas. I'm part of the city's outreach team. My question is kind of for the panel, but also for the city council. We know what we need. We know we need more resources. The reality of the situation is we don't have those resources. So if we implement a camping ban, my question is, where are they supposed to go? If they don't have a place to live, if they don't have support, if they don't have resources, are we just gonna keep on sending people to jail over and over again? Like I don't see what the solution would be. The solution is we get more resources, but the reality is we don't have those resources. So, and I know that it affects people's businesses, but these are also human beings. We have, like Rachel said earlier, we have 500 plus individuals that are out on the street. Like, those are real people. They're not just, and I know that there's a small population of that give everybody a bad rep, but for the most part, they're just trying to survive. They've fallen on hard times and they just want to live. So if, take away their only way of shelter, I don't see how you are going to make that any better, but.
We do have hard copies of a survey for this evening, and that is available through March 2nd. So there's hard copies in the back. You can also scan the QR code. Now, for those of you who may not have your handy-dandy phone or know or like to scan the QR codes, you can head over to speakupgreeley.com, so speakupgreeley.com. The project for the camping restrictions is there. I believe it's the first item that should come up. You can click on that and you'll have some additional information as well as a link for the survey that you can take online. You have until March 2nd to do that. And also just to let you know that this evening's meeting has been recorded. Thank you, Dean, on the box. And that will be available on that Speak Up page as well, and including the PowerPoint for this evening. So all of those materials will be there next week. For the video, we got to do a little editing, but just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that the survey, you can either do the QR code or speakupgreeley.com. Thank you.
So, Lucas, I hear you say, does anybody have an answer to my question? So your question is, where are they going to go if we do a camping ban and there is no shelter? Well, given current state, doesn't mean that's how it'll stay, but given current state, right, the people who are in violation, who don't verbally comply, will do kind of what's happening now, right, is we move from place to place to place, which is probably maddening for everyone, especially when they're back in the same place in 2 weeks. So there's not an answer that I think you would find satisfactory, right? That's just the reality. And so your question, I think, is like, then why are we doing this instead of adding more resources? There's many people would have an opinion and thoughts about that. So the bottom line is we don't have like a yes or no, black or white answer for you. I can say that I'm sure it's super hard when you're out working with 500 people and you don't really have a place to bring them. And I'm glad that you keep showing up every day because you are making a difference. And I mean, the city of Greeley's housed, Mandy had said 153, but I think it's actually closer to 180 individuals in about 18 months. So that's incredible. And that's just a piece of it, right? So, you can't give up. That's the bottom line.
I guess I just didn't really answer my question because if we don't have resources and we implement a camping ban and they have nowhere to go, I just don't ethically, morally, any way you look at it, it doesn't make sense to implement a camping ban when we have no plan for more shelter. Like, if you combine the shelters right now, if you combine all the shelters in Greeley right now, that's less than 150 beds. We have more than 500 unique individuals that we know of. That's only the people that have agreed to let us talk to them. Like, there's even more people that are out there. And so to implement a camping ban with no solution in place just doesn't make sense to me.
My name is Sean. I ran the United Way's Housing Navigation Center Cold Weather Shelter for 4 years. I've worked with over 500 people experiencing homelessness, families, households. Not one of them ever told me that they didn't want housing or they wanted to live on the streets, so just continuing to repeat that message. But we've been talking about the camping ban as a tool, and the research is very clear that it's not an effective tool. It actually makes things worse. It increases costs, it increases the number of arrests, it increases barriers, and most importantly, it increases trauma. It hurts people experiencing homelessness, and these people, they're our neighbors, they're our community members, they're our friends, they're our family. And I feel for the business owners and the people who are like, what about my neighborhood? But what about your neighbor's neighborhood? If we have a camping ban, then all we're doing is moving that problem around. And in the current political atmosphere, I would hope that Greeley can come together as a community and find those neighborly solutions that are shown to be effective. So I implore the city council to look at the data. Loveland, they saw an increase in their complaints when they implemented their camping ban, just right over the highway. So it's not like a mystery that it doesn't work. It's well documented that it doesn't work, and there are more effective solutions that we can be investing our time and money into.
Hear, hear.
So what I'll say is thank you so much for spending an hour and a half with us tonight. Really appreciate your opinions and feedback. Please take the survey. Please, your opinion matters. And that way we can get that feedback back to our council. And we will stick around. Please come talk to us. And thank you. I hope you have a good night.